Access main program. Access main security. Access main program grid.
But in recent generations, we've seen fossil Pokemon change. I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call...
The Pokémon Fossil Museum is coming to America. Land of the free, home of the brave, but not home to fossil Pokemon. Yet. You see, this museum is a paleontological exhibit that currently exists in Fukui Prefectural Museum in Japan. It'll then be moving to the Nagasaki Museum, where it'll take over, turning the entire place into a Pokemon fossil area. Very cool, very exciting. But this, next year in May, will be the first time that this museum has ventured into North America. It's going to be heading to the Fields Museum in Chicago. That's where the Pope's from.
La pace sia con tutti voi!
Once there, exhibit visitors will be able to see fossil Pokemon presented as if they were real-life fossils. It's a very interesting type of concept that is really fun and just gives this extra air of realism to Pokemon. So I called up the director of this museum and asked if there was anywhere that I should be digging. You know, trying to find extra Pokemon that we can add to this collection. So far, all of my digging pursuits have only brought up dead pets and that one guy that I had to report.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
But hopefully today we'll be able to create some new fossil Pokemon for exhibits just like these. Let's hop into it. Hi, I'm the Thesterninator. Welcome to the channel. While you're here, don't forget to drop down below, like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff that makes me and YouTube happy, and let's hop right into the video. As it currently stands, there are well over 1,000 different Pokemon, with variations throughout, like Mega Evolution and Gigantamax Dynamaxing, all this crazy stuff, but only 25 current fossil Pokemon.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
So, let's start looking at some weird animals, some fossils, some ancient creatures to turn into Pokemon. Starting up, I wanted to look at a very, very strange Pokemon. That, of course, is based on the Helicoprion. You may have seen other Pokemon artists take a stab at this design before. It's a weird animal, and one that nature was glad to forget. So I decided I wanted to turn it into a two-stage Pokemon line. Starting out with this weird football-type shape, I really played with what I wanted to do, design-wise, on this look. It wasn't until I actually saw someone on one of those electric unicycle-type things, the one-wheelers, that I thought, that kind of works. That kind of fits exactly what we're going for here. So I played that a lot into the inspiration. I picture this Pokemon being ancient and old, but very much having similarities to some of our modern day technology. Kind of the way that nature tends to inspire tech, but in this case, it's an ancient type of nature. I decided to go instead of with a steel type look, going with a bony protrusion instead. I feel like it adds a little bit of naturalism to the design and makes it feel biologically possible in a couple extra ways. So while I could have gone in and said, well, it's a buzzsaw type shark, let's just make it a big metal buzzsaw, I wanted to play it a little bit more subtle. So here I played up that and brought in some colors to give it a little bit more of that sharky blue, and wanted something that felt natural. Something that didn't feel too heavily inspired by current tech or current infrastructure of material. Instead, playing up something that felt natural, something that used bone as hard as steel to deliver these painful attacks. So this is Carnitike, the water steel Pokemon. Fishermen have long told stories as their boats pull into harbor that the damage to the underside of the vessel was by this Pokemon, but as currently stands, scientists cannot prove its existence. Some claim that it lives deep at the bottom of the ocean, others claim that it's just very quick and very good at hiding, but the main idea here is that it's just no longer around. I love this little Pokemon, and the name Carnitike obviously comes from carnivore and tyke. I wanted to stay away from Carnivine or other names that have a similar sound, but wanted to also give something that still felt like it worked for the inspiration and meshed the two ideas together. I dig this Pokemon, and I dig some of the little lore that we came up with for it. Evolving this Pokemon was a ton of fun, because while I felt like the previous form was a little bit more subdued with the inspiration, this form gets to go all out. I wanted to expand on that idea, make it feel bigger, make it feel more extravagant with the design, and really play into what makes the Helicoprion, what makes it such a weird animal. So looking at the design, I knew that I wanted to go with a more sharky type of look. For those of you who've been around the channel for a while, you know that I definitely struggle when it comes to fish type Pokemon or fish looking Pokemon. So here I wanted to go for your basic shark look, especially feeling that that bottom jaw was going to be so distinct and different. I felt like there was the opportunity there to do something a little bit more wild on the bottom and something a little bit more tame on the top. Like I said before, I looked at these weird unicycle type things and wanted to bring those in for the previous design, and I did something similar here. Looking at Pokemon like Carnitike and Miraidon, who already have this wheel type shape to them, I wanted to bring in this type of inspiration to give some familiarity to the design. So here you can see that I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to bring in this darker tire-like shape that splits open to reveal these huge bony protrusions. Man, I am so happy with the way that this design works and the way that it looks. It's so exciting and so different from other Pokemon designs that we've seen, but I still feel like it fits the general vibe that we go for when designing Fakemon. It's wild, it's crazy, it's tangentially attached to the inspiration, but still feels like its own thing. Maybe it even has some attachment to other Pokemon who already exist, like being a resident or relative of Sharpedo. That'd be really cool. I would love to see that type of thing go on here, and maybe that's something that can be brought up in its ability type. For those of you who don't know and are new to the channel, I love to play this little game with my audience. Go down into the comments and let me know what abilities you think this and the other Pokemon from the video could have. I'm always interested to see what you guys come up with, and honestly, you're a lot better with abilities than I am. Whether they be new abilities invented specifically for these Pokemon, or abilities that already exist that you just think could land onto these guys. I'd love to hear it, and while you're down there, don't forget to check out our Discord as well. We have a quick growing community there where we talk about basically everything, including what upcoming videos may look like and contest type stuff. So yeah, I'd love to see you there. But moving back into the design, I wanted to make this thing feel fierce. I went in bringing those reds that we had just in the eye of Carnitike and using those to really exemplify some of the areas and show off some of the ferocity of this look. I feel like it also allows for this storytelling element, that these Pokemon are so feral, so wild, so ready to attack, that these red markings almost indicate marks where they've been scarred or injured from others of their kind. I really dig when we're able to bring in some storytelling elements and make something exciting out of these designs. So meet Helicarnicus. The name is obviously an inspiration from Helicoprion, the shark which inspired this design, as well as Carnivore. So bringing those two in, we have this terrifying water steel type. Bringing in that steel typing to much more justify those protrusions as being hard as steel. Throughout the various wars in the Pokemon world, there have been known areas that no ship would pass through, especially in ancient times. As large wooden vessels would traverse through narrow passageways, they would come out the other side absolutely destroyed and eviscerated, claiming that this Pokemon was the culprit. But modern day, these sightings are rare if at all, many being chalked up to ghost stories and tales of wandering sailors. But still, evidence of this Pokemon's existence pops up here and there, leading scientists to continue their study. Now, when looking at fossil Pokemon, we have a lot of dinosaurs, a lot of pterodons, a lot of these weird characters from the same basic eras. I wanted to look at an animal that exists in none of those areas, but could still be classified as a fossil Pokemon. I wanted to look at the Pleistocene epoch. That's a time period roughly after the Ice Age, when mammals started to kind of reclaim the Earth. I decided that I wanted to jump in on this Pokemon and take into account one of my favorite real-life animals. That being the Megatherium, the giant ground sloth. These things are insane and weird and just interesting creatures as a whole, and I wanted to bring in a lot of the evidence of this animal's exciting design into this Pokemon. Sloths are one of, if not my favorite animal, and there's so much lore and story to them that I wanted to be able to apply that to a Pokemon. I took some inspiration from Pokemon like Slacking and its whole line when coming up with the color and design of this Pokemon, as well as a few others when looking at how I wanted this thing to be translated. I thought about how sloths actually grow moss and algae and other type of plant growths on their body because they move so slowly, but it actually helps them to camouflage as they traverse the forest trees. It allows them to blend in a lot better and hide themselves, especially since they don't have a ton of offensive capability. But the giant ground sloth was able to throw its weight around as well as wasn't any kind of pushover. This animal was a devastator to anything that got in its path and was able to stand its ground a little bit better than our modern day sloths. So I played a lot of that into play here. I decided that I wanted to go with that green and algae and moss-like look, especially as a camouflage for this Pokemon. I picture it sleeping for most of the day, with many probably not even knowing if it is truly extinct or not, because it's often believed that they could actually just sleep for thousands of years, go into this deep super hibernation type state. But back in their time, they would shroud themselves with this moss type covering to be able to look like just a shrub when they roll themselves up into a ball. As they're rolled and camouflaged in this way, many bypassers would pass them by, believing that they were just any sort of shrub. Even their nose sticking out would look like a berry, so that trainers and other prehistoric humans would pass it up, but Pokemon would come drawn near. That way this Pokemon wouldn't have to go hunting for its food, it would come to it. And while I know that the giant ground sloth is mainly a vegetarian, this Pokemon I wanted to give a little bit of that credence to and make it feel a little bit scarier. I picture this Pokemon having slow start as an ability, but having this tremendous strength. As I've said before though, you guys are the ability people, not me. Just take that with a grain of salt, maybe we have a variation on that ability type. I dig this thing, it's so big, so massive. I picture this thing being just huge and so intimidating. Little do you know, it actually doesn't care about fighting. More so, it cares about napping and eating and napping some more. So I played a lot of that into the design. I want it to feel lazy. I want it to feel like it is a difficult Pokemon to handle, not for its tremendous power, but given from the fact that it does not necessarily want to fight, regardless of the fact that it's probably really good at it. So this is Megalaxium. It's a grass psychic type. The psychic typing is for its ability to put others to sleep, as well as to sleep itself. I wanted to play up that mentality and that look with the sleepiness of this Pokemon and have that be a main factor to its design. Fossils of this Pokemon are rarely found, with some stating it's because it never truly went extinct, but instead is able to go into a super hibernation, where it is able to sleep for thousands of years, holding off from expelling any energy by just sleeping throughout the day, and extending its lifespan. It's unknown how long these creatures can live, or how long they can go without food, with many claiming that they may have seen or encountered one, but upon investigation, none were found. Nearly more trees, shrubs, and bushes. So this Pokemon continues to be a mystery, whether it truly is a fossil Pokemon, long dead to ancient records, or if it's just sleeping. Moving on, I want to stick to the Pleistocene era, specifically because I live not too far from the La Brea tar pits. Given that, this next animal, the Smilodon or saber-toothed cat, is kind of everywhere. It's the mascot of the tar pits and a very cool animal by itself. So let's hop right into it. Starting out, I wanted something small and simple. I knew that this was going to be another two-stage Pokemon design, so I wanted something that allowed for growth and expansion in a further stage, but I still want to give it personality all its own in this form. I may have gone a little bit overboard and given a little bit too much personality, but I feel like it still works here. I ended up making this big, goofy grin, which I absolutely love. It is so cute. I love this guy's stupid little face so much, and I decided to go with an electric ice typing. The electric to capture that unbridled energy of the saber-toothed tiger, or saber-toothed cat if you will, and the ice type to again go with that Pleistocene era, that ice age quote-unquote type of time period. And while the saber-toothed tiger isn't necessarily related to the modern day tiger, I wanted to stay away from specifically covering this thing in stripes. I feel like I could, I feel like it would make sense for a lot of people, but I wanted to stay away from that, utilizing stripes in very strategic and specific areas, mainly to focus less on this thing being a saber-toothed tiger and more so on a saber-toothed cat. Very cute little Pokemon. I very much love him. I'd love to have him as a partner Pokemon on my team. Let me know what your thoughts are about him down in the comments below. If it's not, I love him, I don't want to hear about it. So given this big goofy demeanor, I decided to name this guy Smilacub. Partly for its smiley face, but mostly for its relation to the Smilodon, as well as Cub. It's a Smilodon Cub. Smilacub. As previously said, it is an electric ice type, and is one of the first Pokemon reported to have ever been domesticated. While it's not the first, many fossils of this Pokemon have been spotted near ancient human settlements, believing that this Pokemon may have hunted alongside other humans to bring down much larger prey. While it has a small demeanor, it was no small effort how devastating this was to the local fauna of the areas where it was found. But when you think saber-toothed cat, when you think Smilodon or saber-toothed tiger, you don't think of this cute little endearing creature. No, you think of something intimidating, something scary. So, we of course have to evolve this Pokemon into something that meets your requirements and mine. Playing up that intimidation factor, I went with a structure that really builds on these powerful forelimbs while making the back limbs seem a little bit smaller. This really plays up that gruff and powerful type of mystique to this design, but I also wanted it to have a little bit of flowiness to it. I played with the idea of utilizing the tail and the fur from the back legs to really flow and make this extra shape on the back that makes it feel like this thing could just leap and propel itself with power. Also, given that it's getting a little bit warmer, I'm noticing that my dog, Bebop, has started shedding a lot of the big fur on his hindquarters, and I kind of had that on the brain, having to go out and pick up this fur and brush it all clean. I thought, that feels like such an ancient part of an animal's evolution. I wanted to bring that in and utilize that to make what would be these fluffy back limbs into these electrified pouncing machines. So I played that up a lot and eventually went in with the coloring and found I was kind of just using the same color scheme and even the same layout as Boltund. So I decided to change up some things kind of last minute, specifically the primary color that I was using for the base of this Pokemon, but I also got to play with some of the ice textures for the saber-tooth teeth. So it wasn't all a loss, right? I got to bring in some of those lighter blues to create that icy type of dynamic to the structure because of course it is a dual type, ice-electric. And I know often we may come across Pokemon designs that don't fully utilize one or the other of the typings. You know, you can have a Pokemon that looks big and crazy and fiery and an inferno and all this stuff, and then you throw a ground type on because it has 4 legs and is on the ground. Here, I definitely wanted to capture both typings, the ice and the electricity. I feel like it's such a unique look that I wanted to make sure that it made sense and worked in the design, and me being forced to move away from the Boltund look into this bluer shade, I feel really captures that, and was a happy accident that it ended up working out that it added to the design rather than took away. So here we have Whilodon, the name coming from wild as well as Smilodon. It is still an electric ice type. While Smilacub fossils have been found near human settlements, Whilodon fossils have been found nowhere near them, almost as if they preferred to not be around humans, preferring instead to take on larger prey and keep all the kill for themselves. This Pokemon has been known to be greedy and has been reportedly found near ancient caverns and ancient caves to keep to itself. Sightings of this Pokemon have been chalked up to cryptid-like spottings, but none have been found officially still living in any region. When we first ventured into Galar, we were excited to see what fossils we would find, only to be met with these weird abominations that, admittedly, I didn't care for, but have grown very accustomed to and actually kind of like the designs, to the point that I thought, what if we did something similar here? But instead of playing with the idea of finishing the DNA that was missing from these fossils, we instead left it missing, brought back to life what existed but didn't add anything on to. Yes, for this design, I wanted to look at something that was familiar, taking a Tyrantrum and expanding on the idea of it being a fossil Pokemon. What if these fossils that were eventually brought in with other types of DNA and material surrounding them and normally come out as a rock type, didn't? What if instead of that rock typing filling in the gaps, we kept this Pokemon as it was and allowed the gaps to continue to exist? I decided to create this ghost type Pokemon. This one that was this weird amalgamation of ghostly energy and dinosaur physics. Doesn't that just sound cool? Doesn't ghost dinosaur as a phrase just tickle a certain part of your brain that says, yes, I want that. Make ghost dinosaur, please. So I did. You're welcome. Bringing in that DNA and mixing it around a little bit, I was also able to change some of the colors up, because if we don't have the tissue to create these Pokemon, we obviously have to make assumptions. And it allowed us to bring in these darker colors that really exemplify that ghostly energy. This one was more so just kind of a fun thought experiment on what if we never finished by adding in that DNA from other things to these Pokemon. Kind of similar how in Jurassic Park they say they finished the DNA by using that of frogs, which caused a ton of problems and created a very successful franchise. What if instead of that, they just created ghost dinosaurs? Listen, ghost dinosaur is such a crazy phrase that I just kind of had to do it. It popped into my brain and it was no longer up to me on what to draw. I had to draw ghost dinosaur. So meet Revantrum, the mix between Revenant, which is a vengeful spirit, and Tyrantrum. It is a ghost dragon type, and while many have claimed to have heard of this Pokemon, mainly in tabloid type magazines, the government continues to say that it doesn't exist. But luckily, our Porico executives have let us know that they have been working on something behind the scenes, bringing Pokemon back from the brink of extinction in odd and bizarre ways. Ways that feel that they wouldn't make sense to the common populace, but hopefully will be good for humanity, good for humanity, good for humanity, good for humanity. So which was your favorite? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're there, don't forget to check out my other links where you can support the channel, like becoming a member for just $3 a month, where you'll get access to videos early, as well as other perks throughout the month. But with all that said, it sounds like you know where to find me, so I'll catch you in the next one. Before we go, I want to give a big shout out to all of the supporters of the channel, but specifically some of our higher tier supporters, those over at Patreon being Dan Bush, Styx TV, Soren Frost, Caitlin Cat, Justin Grenier, Jeremy Sunday, Drake Knoll, Yuja Sakaki, Sky, Elandriel, Kobo4231, Chompy Kachan, and Dan Hassel. And I also want to give a shout out to all of our YouTube members, those being Crimbo McSwizzle, Kaylin Cat, Somni Stars, Siren Shadow, Zed Ravenmore, RJ, and Linksia. Couldn't do any of this without you guys. Thank you so much for the support, and if you aren't supporting the channel in any way, still thank you for being here, and consider becoming a member of our Discord. It's free, and I'd love to hang out with you guys. So, all that said, I love you.